If you've ever had a friend who only remembers you when they need something, you'll probably understand why I decided to become a little petty. For most of my adult life, I've been the dependable one. The friend who always shows up. The one who listens, lends, and helps without expecting much in return. I never thought twice about it. Being generous made me feel good, and I liked knowing the people I cared about were okay. One of my closest friendships started in college. We'd been friends for years, and I'd always thought of her as my chosen sister. We studied together, shared secrets, celebrated milestones. Over time, though, I started to notice that she seemed to pop up in my messages mostly when she needed something. First, it was little things. Borrowing my charger, asking for my class notes, wanting to share my Netflix login just for a month, because she was feeling down. I didn't mind. Sharing resources with a friend felt normal. Then it became a pattern. She'd message me to ask, "Hey, can you recharge my phone real quick?" Or, "Could you send me your OTT password again? I can't find it." She never offered to cover the cost, never suggested splitting expenses. And because I earned decently, I let it slide. I thought it was just my way of showing her she mattered. If she felt comfortable asking me for help, didn't that mean she trusted me? I believed that for a long time. But there's a big difference between trusting someone and using them. And eventually, I learned that lesson the hard way. There came a point when life hit me hard. I don't want to get into every detail, but suffice it to say that everything started unraveling all at once. Health issues, stress at work, some painful family problems. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing in quicksand, and every attempt to pull myself out only dragged me down further. I tried to keep my struggles private. I've always been the strong one, the listener, the helper. But eventually, I reached the point where I just needed someone to be there for me. So I called her. I remember the exact conversation. My voice was shaky. I said, "I'm not okay. I don't need advice, I just really need you to be around. Can we talk?" There was a long pause. She sounded distracted, like she was scrolling her phone. Then she sighed. "You are always finding ways to be unhappy," she said flatly. I didn't know what to say. My mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She launched into a monologue about how she was stressed too, and how she didn't have time for negativity. She said I needed to learn to focus on the positive. I remember sitting there, phone pressed to my ear, feeling smaller with every word. For years, I'd been her sounding board. When she was preparing for exams, I'd help her revise. When she fought with her boyfriend, I was the one she called at 2 a.m. When she didn't have money to renew her subscriptions, I'd send her a payment before she even asked twice. And here I was, the one time I was asking for anything beyond money or favors, and she couldn't be bothered. When we hung up, I felt like something had snapped inside me. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe she didn't mean it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't a one-time slip. She never asked how I was, never offered to return the kindness I'd extended to her 100 times over. It was always about her. Even after that phone call, she kept texting me her usual requests. "Hey, can you send me your Netflix login again?" I got logged out, and that was the moment I realized I'd finally had enough. I'm not proud of how petty my brain got after that. But sometimes, pettiness is the only outlet you have when you've spent too long being the nice one. I didn't want a big fight. I didn't want to send a long message about how hurt I was. To be honest, I didn't think she'd even read it. She'd probably skim it, call me dramatic, and then expect everything to go back to normal. I didn't want to perform my pain for her approval. So I thought, what's one small way I can reclaim a shred of dignity? It was almost too obvious. She used my Netflix account constantly. She'd log in every evening, binge shows, send me recommendations like I was her personal content concierge. It was the one thing she always remembered to ask about. And it was the one thing I still controlled. First, I just changed my password. Clean break. She noticed immediately. "Hey, did you change your Netflix login? I can't get in," she texted the next day. I stared at her message. "No, how are you? No, is everything okay?" Just a demand. And instead of ignoring her, I replied, "Yeah, sorry. Here's the new password. She said thanks. No further conversation. That night, she logged in again. I waited about an hour, imagining her getting comfortable on her couch, queuing up a series. Then I logged her out. She tried again. I changed the password again. The next evening, she tried OTP verification. My phone pinged. Your Netflix OTP is 843276. I grinned. I sent her the OTP. She logged in, and I logged her out, over and over. Some nights I wondered if it was childish. But then I'd remember her voice telling me I was always finding ways to be unhappy. And I'd decide she could survive without free Netflix for once. I became almost ritualistic about it. There was something weirdly satisfying in the predictability of it all. She would log in, I would log her out. She would text me, I would reply with the password or the OTP. Then she'd get comfortable, open her show, and poof, logged out again. At first, I thought maybe she'd figure it out quickly. Maybe she'd realize I was the one doing it, and we'd have an inevitable fight about it. But she never did. Instead, she tried everything but reflecting on her behavior. She reset the password herself once. I let her. Then, an hour later, I reset it again. She called me, voice all sugar, as if we were still best friends. Hey, can you help me? Netflix keeps logging me out. I think there's a problem. Oh no, I said lightly. Sure, here's the password again. I think she was expecting me to show more urgency, maybe even apologize for technical issues. But I was perfectly calm, and that probably confused her the most. If I'd yelled or confronted her, she could have turned it into a fight about how I was overreacting. But when someone acts entitled to your time and resources, the most unsettling thing you can do is simply stop caring. I was polite. I never refused her OTPs. I never said no. I just quietly made sure she never got to stay logged in long enough to enjoy the perks she took for granted. Sometimes I'd picture her sitting on her couch, all ready to unwind, only to be kicked out mid-episode. I'd imagine her frustration growing each time, and I'd feel lighter. It was petty, yes, but it felt like the only honest response to someone who had used up all my generosity and given nothing back. Over the next few weeks, she kept trying. She'd text, "Can you check if there's an issue with your account? It keeps logging me out." I'd reply, "No issues here. This is really annoying. I understand." She'd call, hoping a phone conversation would make me cave. "It's weird. Maybe you should call Netflix support." "Sure, I'll look into it." Of course, I never did. The best part was that she never once asked me how I was doing. Not once. She was so focused on regaining access to free entertainment that she couldn't even pretend to care about anything else. And that made it easier to keep going. Because by then, I'd realized this wasn't just about Netflix. This was about all the little ways she had trained me to prioritize her comfort over my boundaries. She thought she was entitled to my time, my money, my passwords. She was wrong. So I kept changing the password, logging her out, waiting for her to try again. It was a small, quiet rebellion. But it was also me finally drawing a line. After the first couple of weeks of my little Netflix operation, something fascinating started to happen. She grew increasingly desperate. I don't think she was used to anyone setting boundaries with her. She certainly wasn't used to me doing it. I'd spent years saying yes to everything. So when her effortless access to my account evaporated, she didn't know what to do. First, she tried the polite approach. "Hey, it's logging me out again. Can you send me the password one more time?" I'd send it.
No fuss, no lecture.
Then she tried guilt. "I'm in the middle of a really stressful week. This is the only thing helping me unwind." I replied, "I'm sorry to hear that. Here's the password," and logged her out again an hour later. After that, she moved to annoyance. "Seriously, you need to call Netflix. There's obviously something wrong." "Sure, I'll look into it," I'd say cheerfully. I never did. The next escalation was her trying to reset the password herself. I'd get an email alert that the password had changed. I'd wait about 30 minutes, just enough time for her to get comfy, and then I'd reset it again. I kept thinking she'd eventually confront me. She'd call and demand to know if I was doing this on purpose. Maybe she'd even pretend to care how I was, if only to manipulate me into stopping. But she never did. I think she was too proud to admit she needed me for something as trivial as Netflix. So instead, she'd pretend nothing was wrong and keep trying, like the outcome would magically change. One evening, I was scrolling through my phone when she called me. Something she hadn't done in weeks unless she wanted credentials. Her voice was extra sweet, but tight at the edges. "Hey." So, it logged me out again. "Oh no," I said, trying not to smile. "Yeah, it's really inconvenient. Could you just check if maybe your account is compromised? Because this doesn't happen to anyone else." "I'll look into it," I lied. She paused, probably waiting for me to offer more. When I didn't, she finally blurted, "I mean, you don't have to be so weird about this." I raised an eyebrow even though she couldn't see me. "Weird about what?" I asked, my tone perfectly neutral. "I don't know. You could just give me consistent access instead of making me keep logging in." There it was, the closest thing to an admission that she knew exactly what I was doing. I kept my voice soft. "I've been sharing the password whenever you asked." She made a frustrated noise, and for a moment, I thought she might actually say what we were both thinking. But she didn't. She just sighed and said, "Fine, whatever." Then she hung up. I waited. 2 days passed without any messages.
No TP requests.
No reset attempts. Then, like clockwork, she tried again. My phone pinged with an OTP. I shared it. She logged in, and I logged her out. After that, she stopped trying to call. She stopped texting anything beyond single-sentence requests. It was like the final, silent acknowledgement that the game was over, but she still didn't want to say it out loud. She could have asked, "Why are you doing this?" She could have said, "I'm sorry for not being there," but she never did. So I kept logging her out over and over until eventually, she gave up. I wish I could tell you that my little Netflix vendetta ended with some big cathartic showdown, that she finally called me in tears to apologize, or that I got to deliver a dramatic monologue about all the ways she'd failed me as a friend. But that's not how it happened. The truth is, most endings aren't clean or cinematic. They're a slow drifting apart, a quiet decision you make in your own head and heart. After weeks of her trying to regain access, the requests stopped coming. No more OTP notifications. No more password resets. No more calls pretending nothing had changed. One day, I realized I hadn't heard from her in almost a month. "No, how are you?" "No, hope you're okay." Nothing. And that was when it hit me. This was always who she was. I used to think that if I was generous enough, patient enough, supportive enough, I could earn her reciprocation. That one day she'd wake up and realize I deserved the same care I gave her. But people don't change because you're nice to them. They change when they want to. When I look back on everything, the countless favors, the silent disappointments, the loneliness of realizing I was always the giver, I feel a little sad for the person I used to be. The version of me who thought love and friendship were transactional, that if I just kept giving, eventually it would be my turn to receive. I don't regret helping her. I don't regret being the kind of person who tries to be there for others. But I do regret not recognizing sooner that you can't pour into someone who only sees you as a faucet. Logging her out of Netflix was petty. I know that. But it was also symbolic. It was me saying, "You don't get to take up space in my life without showing up for me in return." I never told her outright that I was done. I didn't send a final message or write a big explanation. I didn't owe her an exit interview. She taught me, in her own way, that some people will never see you beyond what you can do for them. And the best thing you can do is quietly step away. So yes, I logged her out over and over again. And eventually, I logged her out of my life for good. Now, when I think about her, I don't feel angry anymore. I just feel relieved. My Netflix is my own again. My energy is my own again. My sense of self-respect is intact. And that, more than any subscription or petty revenge, is what makes me feel like I finally won. Because some people just don't deserve ice cream. And some people definitely don't deserve your password.